My true story, from Malibu. My son said I wasn't invited to Thanksgiving. His wife didn't want drama. So I spent it at the beach with the family they forgot I still had. My son said, "Let me send you some firewood to keep warm, Mom, or better yet, how about I just buy you a wooden coffin? That way you'll stay warm forever, and we won't have to worry about Thanksgiving next year." He said it while laughing, like it was some kind of twisted joke. My son, the same child I once begged God to let live. The baby I stayed up all night for, watching him breathe through a machine in the neonatal ICU. The boy I sang lullabies to through tears, afraid he might stop breathing if I looked away for even a second. Now here he was, standing in his polished kitchen, beside a granite countertop I helped pay for, telling me I was disposable. I said nothing. Not a gasp, not a word, just silence. I held my breath so long I forgot I was still alive. He didn't even flinch. No awkward shift, no nervous cough. He looked at me like a man who'd been rehearsing that line in the mirror for days, waiting for the chance to say it. And when he finally did, he looked relieved. His wife, Lena, didn't even come out of the living room. I could hear cartoons playing, the kids were laughing. She had no intention of facing me. She didn't need to, she had trained him well. "Lena just wants a peaceful holiday this year," he added, like that explained everything. "No stress, no drama, you know how it gets, Mom." Yes, I knew exactly how it got. I remembered the year she told me not to bring my sweet potato casserole because no one really eats old-style food anymore. Or the time she suggested I wear beige to the family photo shoot so I wouldn't clash with the color scheme. Or how she always found a way to seat me next to the trash can, the back door, the coldest corner of the room. And I remembered every time I swallowed it, smiled through it, told myself it was for the kids. But not this time. I put the tin of cranberry jam on the counter, the one I had made from scratch, just like my mother taught me. Next to it, I placed the scarf I had knitted for my grandson, each stitch woven with the hope that maybe, just maybe, it would matter. He didn't even look at them. "It's not personal, Ma," he said, shrugging. "It's just easier this way." Easier. I walked out. Not in anger, in realization. Outside, snow was starting to fall, soft flakes like feathers, quiet and cold. I pulled my coat tight around me. No one followed me, no one called after me. I walked down the sidewalk as if I were invisible, because to them I already was. At the bus stop, I stood beneath the street lamp, listening to the hum of winter. My hands were bare. I had forgotten my gloves. But it wasn't the cold that stung, it was the clarity. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't a scheduling error or a misunderstanding or the busy chaos of holiday life. This was erasure. Deliberate. Efficient. They didn't forget me. And somewhere between that realization and the arrival of the number 14 bus, I stopped being surprised. I rode home through the dark streets of Denver, the city lights flickering past like old memories. The driver didn't speak. I was grateful. I stared at the frost forming on the window, remembering how I used to draw hearts on the glass with my finger when Mark was a little boy. He'd giggle, then press his tiny hand against mine. Felt like another lifetime. At home, I unlocked the door to my small house, the one I kept spotless, though no one visited anymore. The warmth hit me like a betrayal. I didn't want warmth. I wanted understanding. I wanted kindness. I placed my keys in the bowl by the door, took off my coat, sat in my husband's old chair and waited for the tears. They didn't come. I had cried too many times before. When I buried my husband, when I sent my son to college with every penny we had, when he married a woman who never looked me in the eye, when he stopped calling, when he started only texting, when he stopped that too. Now I had nothing left to cry about, just facts, just silence. I boiled water, made a cup of tea, sat by the window and looked at the backyard, at the old willow tree where I had scattered my husband's ashes. I whispered to him, "They don't want me anymore, James. They think I'm..." Noise. The house creaked like it was sighing with me. I reached for the photo album, the one I rarely opened. Flipping through its pages, I saw a version of me I barely recognized. Young, laughing, holding Mark in one arm, a beach hat in the other. And next to me, Thomas. My breath caught. Thomas. His smile, his hands, Malibu. I had not thought about that summer in years after James died, and before I moved back to Malibu for good. I had spent 3 months in California, trying to remember who I was, and in that time I had met someone who reminded me, who saw me, who loved me. We were complicated. The world didn't approve. My family didn't approve. I had a son to raise, a reputation to keep, a life to rebuild. So I left. I never told Mark about Thomas. Never told anyone. It was easier that way, just like Mark said. But now, in the quiet of my empty house, I realized something I hadn't dared admit before. Maybe I had spent too much of my life choosing what was easier for everyone else. I put the photo down and stood, walked to the hallway, pulled the suitcase from the top shelf. It still had the airline tag from my last trip, a hospital visit 2 years ago. I started packing, not because I had somewhere to go, but because I could not stay. I folded clothes, packed my toothbrush, slipped the photo into the front pocket. My hands were steady, my heart wasn't racing. It felt right. At midnight, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote one sentence on a piece of paper. I am not drama. I am not disposable. I am done. I placed it under the cranberry tin. Then I bought a one-way bus ticket to Malibu, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to hope. I did not pack much. Just a few old sweaters, a pair of slacks that still fit without sagging, my warmest coat, the hand-knitted scarf I made last winter, not for anyone else this time, just for me. I added 2 pairs of shoes, both practical, 1 small toiletry bag, 1 book, and then, before I zipped the suitcase shut, I walked over to the living room and opened the drawer of the wooden side table. Inside was a framed photograph. My wedding day. James looked dashing in his navy suit. I wore a pale blue dress, not white, not ivory. We were both widowed young, both cautious, both grateful. I took the picture from the frame, folded it gently, and slipped it into the front pocket of my suitcase. Then I took another photo from an envelope behind the frame, a much older picture, one that had been hidden for years. It was the only one I still had of me and Thomas, his arm around my shoulder, my eyes squinting from sunlight, sand on our feet, wind in our hair. Malibu, 1983. I sat on the edge of the couch and stared at the worn edges of that photograph. Thomas had been so gentle, so full of life. I had just turned 38, Mark was 9, too young to be left alone, too old to not notice his mother's sadness. After James died in the accident, the life I knew unraveled. The insurance money came late, and the bills came fast. I found a small job opportunity through a friend, housekeeping for a family in California, Malibu. I took it. I needed space, sun, and silence. Mark stayed with my sister in Malibu for the summer. Just one summer, I told myself. That was when I met Thomas. He was the gardener for the property 2 houses down. A veteran, a writer. He was mending from his own grief, a sister gone too soon. He used to bring me lemons from his tree, leave them in a bowl with handwritten quotes tucked underneath. He never tried to impress me, just made space for me. We would walk on the beach when my work was done, talk about books, music, the future we never imagined ourselves allowed to want. But it did not last. One evening, Mark called me in tears, missing home. My sister said he was having nightmares. She told me I needed to choose, my child or this California fantasy. When I told my aunt I had grown close to Thomas, she froze. "He's a good man," I said. Her response came cold. "He's not your kind of man." That meant one thing. Thomas was black. Malibu was not kind about such things back then. My family, even less so. I didn't fight. I packed. I left. He held my hand at the bus station, didn't say anything cruel. Just kissed my fingers and whispered, "You're allowed to choose yourself too, someday." But I didn't. I went back. I became the dependable widow, the strong mother, the silent supporter. I never told Mark about Thomas, and I never let myself write him again. Now, 39 years later, after being told to choose between firewood and a coffin, I found myself staring at his smile in an old photo, wondering if he would even remember me. Maybe he was gone. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe I was chasing ghosts. But I knew one thing for sure. I could no longer stay in a place where I was treated like one. I zipped up the suitcase. The squeaky wheel still groaned the same way it did during my hospital trips. I tied a ribbon on the handle, red so it would stand out. I turned off the lights in each room like a ritual, pausing to touch the door frames, the backs of chairs, the faded pictures of Mark as a boy. Each one a farewell, not a dramatic exit, just a quiet goodbye. When I got to the front door, I hesitated, not out of fear, out of fatigue. Leaving at 77 is different than at 38. Your body does not move quickly, your breath is shorter, but your resolve, your soul, is sharper, cleaner. I picked up the note I'd written the night before, the one that simply said, "I am not drama. I am not disposable. I am done." I placed it on the mantel, right below the photo of James. He would understand, he always did. Then I locked the door behind me. The air outside was biting. Snow flurries floated in circles, dancing against the porch light. The world felt heavy and weightless at once. I did not call a cab, I walked. Suitcase dragging behind me like an echo. At the corner of Maple and 3rd, the bus pulled up with a low sigh. I boarded. The driver nodded. I sat in the same seat I always did, 4th row from the back, next to the heater vent. We passed Mark's neighborhood. I did not look up. We passed the diner where I used to take the grandkids for hot chocolate. I did not wave. When we arrived at Union Station, I bought a ticket west. One ways, no return. The clerk didn't ask why. I looked down at the ticket, ran my fingers across the printed words. Malibu. It felt like both a destination and a confession. I sat alone in the waiting area. The station was quiet. People were scattered, reading, dozing, scrolling their phones. I watched them all and felt invisible, but not in a painful way, in a peaceful way, like a tree at night, unseen but still standing. I reached into my bag and took out the photo of Thomas, held it in both hands like it was glass. "I don't know if you're still there," I whispered to it, "but I'm coming anyway." That was the moment. The true moment of departure, not the locking of the house, not the buying of the ticket, but the decision, the quiet, unshakable decision, to go where I was once loved, even if only for a while, to choose, finally, not what was easy for others, but what was right for me. And so, with snow falling like soft permission around me, I boarded the train. I did not know what waited for me in California, but I knew exactly what I was leaving behind. Not a house, not a city, but a version of myself that was no longer mine. It had been nearly 4 decades, but Malibu had barely changed. The light was still golden in the morning, soft and shy like it was unsure whether it was welcome. The ocean still whispered against the shore like it was telling secrets only the lonely could understand. And the air, that particular California air, held the same mix of salt and memory I remembered and feared and longed for all at once. The taxi driver didn't speak as we pulled off the Pacific Coast Highway and into the winding streets above the beach. I watched each curve of the road like I was flipping through a forgotten photo album. Street names triggered memories. Coral Drive, where we used to park and listen to jazz through rolled-down windows. Moonrise Hill, where Thomas once read me poetry until my knees gave out from more than just the incline. I told the driver to stop near the old shopping square. "Here's fine," I said, even though I could have gone straight to the address. But I needed a moment. I stood there for a while after the car drove off, just breathing, letting my feet remember the ground, letting my heart remember who it used to be. The bookstore was still there. It was smaller now, sandwiched between a yoga studio and an organic juice bar, but the blue awning still fluttered the same way it had in 1983. Back then, I stood under that awning in a sundress, nervous as hell, watching Thomas sign his first published book. There had been barely a dozen people there. I was the only one who brought flowers. He wrote in the dedication, "To Helen, because you saw it before anyone else did." I pushed the door open. Inside, it smelled like cedarwood and dust, the kind of place that respected silence. A young woman stood behind the counter, tapping on her tablet. She looked up with a polite smile that flickered into curiosity when she saw me. "Can I help you find something?" I hesitated. "I'm actually looking for someone, a writer. Thomas Avery." Her eyes lit up. "Mr. Avery? He still comes in every month. He signs copies of his old books and picks up new ones. He's kind of a legend around here." My chest thudded. "Does he still live nearby?" I asked. She nodded. "Same place, beachside. You can't miss it. White gate, blue mailbox, always has sunflowers out front. Sunflowers still. Thank you, I whispered. As I walked out, I glanced toward the nonfiction section. His name was there, embossed in gold on a row of worn spines. I didn't touch them. Not yet. I needed the real thing first. It took me 15 minutes to get to the house. 15 minutes to walk into a memory I wasn't sure I deserved to reclaim. The house was exactly as I remembered it. Not large, but proud, weather-worn wood siding, paint flaking in the corners, and yes, sunflowers. In 2 rusted pots, defiantly yellow against the sea-gray sky. My hands trembled as I reached the gate. I hesitated. What if he had someone now? What if he didn't remember? What if he did? But my feet betrayed my doubts. I walked up the stone path, each step sounding like thunder in my chest. When I reached the door, I paused. Then, with the gentleness of someone knocking on time itself, I tapped twice. Footsteps. Slow. Steady. The door creaked open. And there he was. Older, of course. Thinner. Beard gray, hair shorter than I remembered. But the eyes. Those eyes. Still carried every page of every story he ever wrote and every word he never got to say. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then he whispered, "Helen?" I tried to answer, but my voice cracked. "Hi, Thomas." He blinked once, twice, and then the tears came. No warning, no shame. Just tears, falling fast down his cheeks as he reached for me with both hands. I stepped forward, into his arms. Into the arms I had dreamed of in silence for 39 years. We didn't speak right away. There was no need. He held me like something that had been lost too long. I let him. When we finally pulled back, he laughed softly, wiping his eyes like he couldn't believe he was allowed to. "I thought I imagined you," he said. "I thought you forgot me," I replied. "I tried." We stood in the doorway a little longer, just looking at each other. Then he stepped aside and said, "Come in, please." Inside, the house smelled like rosemary and old books. The walls were lined with shelves, some crooked, some packed. There were paintings I didn't recognize, and one I did. The watercolor of the beach we used to sit on. "You kept that?" I asked. I never took it down. He made tea, his hands shaking only slightly. We sat at his kitchen table, across from each other like no time had passed, and yet all of time had. I told him everything. About Mark, about Lena, about Thanksgiving, about the coffin comment. He winced, his knuckles whitened around his mug. Then he stood, walked around the table, and knelt beside me. "I should have come after you," he said. "I should have fought. I should have stayed," I whispered. He looked up at me, eyes blazing. "You're here now." Outside, the sun was starting to set, casting long gold shadows through the windows. The ocean roared in the distance, as if applauding something sacred. Thomas took my hand. "Stay," he said. "Just for the night. I bought a one-way ticket." His breath hitched. "You're serious?" I nodded. "I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I can't go back." He kissed my hand, then stood. "Then let's start with dinner, and you can tell me what you do remember." "About Malibu. About us." I smiled. I remembered everything. That night, Thomas made roasted vegetables and rice pilaf. The kitchen still held the same rhythm I remembered. Pots clinking, soft jazz playing from the radio, a candle lit not for romance but for comfort. He asked if I still liked chamomile tea after dinner. I did. We ate slowly, like people who had learned the cost of rushing. After the dishes were rinsed and dried, we sat in the sunroom, the same one where he used to read drafts of his early work aloud, back when his voice still carried the tremble of doubt. He leaned back in the chair across from me, fingers laced on his lap, and said, "I never married." The words fell like a pebble in still water. Small, unassuming, but their ripple reached deep. "I dated," he continued, "once, maybe twice, but no one ever made me feel like you did." I looked away, overwhelmed. Not by surprise, but by recognition. "I didn't either," I whispered. He tilted his head. "I never remarried after James. Never even really looked. I told myself it was for Mark, but the truth is," I paused, then faced him fully, "no one could live in a room already filled with your memory." His eyes glassed again. "All this time, Helen, I thought I was being foolish. No, I said. You were being faithful. We sat in silence for a long time after that, but it was not awkward. It was full. Later he asked if I wanted to join him the next day for a small local gathering, a Thanksgiving lunch hosted at the community center for seniors who lived alone. He volunteered there every year. I usually just serve food or set up chairs, he said. But maybe this year we can just sit. I agreed. The next morning I dressed in a blue cardigan and the necklace James gave me on our last anniversary. Not out of mourning, but memory. Thomas wore a gray sweater and a tan scarf. He still smelled like sandalwood and ink. The center was warm, bustling with soft laughter and clinking cutlery. Dozens of people, mostly silverhead and slow-moving, filled the tables. Some had family. Many did not. Thomas introduced me as an old friend. People smiled, nodded. One woman asked if we had known each other long. 40 years, he said simply. We sat at a table near the window where the sun lit the edge of the ocean. I watched the waves and thought, even water remembers. Someone tapped a glass, a young woman with a clipboard, probably a volunteer, and asked if anyone wanted to share what they were thankful for this year. There were murmurs. A few shaky voices spoke of health, new knees, great-grandchildren. Then Thomas stood. People turned, expecting their usual storyteller, but his voice was quieter than usual. Deeper. I don't speak often at these, he began, but this year is different. He looked down at me. This year, someone came back into my life, someone I never thought I'd see again. We were young when we met, different lives, different families, but she made me feel seen. She made me believe I had something worth saying, long before anyone else believed it. I froze. This woman, he said, his voice cracking, is the reason I started writing in the first place. She is the reason I ever believed I was worth loving. There were soft gasps around the room. She left, he continued, because life demanded it. Because being brave does not always mean staying. And I never blamed her. I waited, not because I thought she'd return, but because no one else ever fit. He reached out, took my hand in his, and said, clear and slow, the only woman I ever loved is now the reason I keep going. The room fell silent. Some smiled. A few wiped their eyes. I sat there, not blinking, as he held my hand like it anchored him to the world. After a moment, someone at another table started clapping. Then another. And another. Until the room was filled with the quiet, steady applause of people who understood what it meant to lose, and wait, and still believe. I did not speak. I couldn't. Not yet. But inside me, something broke open. Not like glass, but like spring soil. For the first time in decades, I felt seen not as someone's mother, someone's widow, someone's problem, but simply someone. After the lunch, we walked along the beach, shoes off, sand cold under our feet, the wind tangling what was left of my hair. He offered me his scarf. I took it. We did not talk much. We did not need to. As the sun dipped low and the tide reached higher, he stopped, turned to me and said, "Stay." I looked at him. And this time, I did not leave. Each morning in Malibu felt like a quiet resurrection. The ocean, faithful as breath, kissed the shoreline with the same rhythm I remembered from decades ago. But it sounded different now, not like longing, but like belonging. I would wake before sunrise, wrap myself in Thomas's scarf, and walk barefoot to the edge of the water, letting the tide remind me that I was still here. There was something about being near the sea that made time feel generous. I no longer rushed to make breakfast, fold laundry, or call to check in with people who had stopped checking on me. I let myself be still, and in that stillness I met the version of me I thought I'd buried in Malibu. The Helen who laughed out loud, who danced barefoot, who dared to imagine joy beyond usefulness. One morning, as we sat on the deck sipping coffee, Thomas turned to me and said, "There's an event this week, Thanksgiving Day, at the Boardwalk Center." I looked up. "It's for elders with no family or those whose families—" "Well, you know," he added softly. "I did," he smiled. "They usually just eat and listen to music, but this year they asked if I knew someone who might want to speak." "Me?" His eyes crinkled. "No one else I'd rather hear from." At first I resisted. What would I say? Who would care? But that afternoon I saw a woman on the beach crying into her sleeves. She looked about my age, alone. I didn't approach her, but I understood. Maybe someone out there needed to hear what I never got to say. So I said yes. Thanksgiving arrived with skies so blue it made your heart ache. The event was held in an open-air pavilion near the water, decorated with simple paper leaves and folding chairs. Dozens of elders sat wrapped in sweaters, some in wheelchairs, others hunched but alert. Volunteers bustled with trays of food, warm cider, and second chances. Thomas introduced me as someone with a story that deserves a room. I stood behind the small wooden podium. The mic was too tall. Someone adjusted it for me. I cleared my throat, not to gain attention, but to steady myself. "My name is Helen," I began, and I was almost erased. A hush fell. I raised a son, buried a husband, worked jobs people looked down on. Was the quiet one in the room, the extra chair at the table, the name that got left off the invitation. Some people nodded. I was told, just last week, that maybe a coffin would be better for everyone, that I was more burden than blessing, and for a moment I believed it. I paused, but then I remembered something. I held up an old photo. Thomas had printed it for me that morning. This was me 39 years ago, on this very beach. That girl? She laughed. She danced. She was brave, even when afraid. I looked around the room. I came back here because I wanted to feel like her again, and I did. Not because of a miracle, but because someone remembered me, not for what I gave, but for who I was. I let the silence sit. If you're here today, wondering if you matter, let me say this clearly. You do. Whether anyone calls, whether anyone cares, you are not drama. You are not disposable. You are not done. When I stepped down, people clapped. Not politely, but like something inside them had been shaken awake. What I didn't know was that a young volunteer, a college student named Maya, had recorded the entire speech on her phone. She uploaded it that night with the caption, "She thought no one wanted her story. I think the world needs it." By morning, the clip had gone viral. By the next afternoon, the video had over 3 million views. It began quietly, just a few hundred shares, then a few thousand, then a wildfire of comments across social media. Who is this woman? She reminds me of my grandma. Why are we letting our elders feel this way? But it was one particular sentence that sent the video viral. I was told a coffin might be better than my presence. That line hit people like a punch. Thousands shared stories in the comments about being abandoned, about their own silent mothers, about guilt and gratitude. Within 48 hours, the video was picked up by a popular talk show, then a major news outlet, then a viral TikTok creator who lip-synced my entire speech in full makeup and tears, calling it the most powerful 5 minutes I've ever heard. They started digging. Someone recognized my voice. Another recognized the necklace I wore, an heirloom I'd once shown during a virtual book club years ago, when I still tried to be involved in Mark's company outreach. Then someone made the connection. The internet exploded. Breaking, viral grandmother revealed as Helen Green, mother of tech CEO Mark Green. Headlines rolled in like thunderclouds. The mother behind the speech, what Mark Green doesn't want you to know. From boardroom to backlash, Mark Green's Thanksgiving scandal. The quote, "Let me send you some firewood or a coffin," surfaced quickly. It was in a leaked message thread Mark had shared with a colleague. The language matched too perfectly. Someone, likely from within, had kept receipts. Then came the outrage. Twitter raged, Reddit dissected, LinkedIn turned somber. How can a man who leads a company promising empathy-driven tech treat his own mother like that? Investors pulled out. 2 major clients paused their contracts. A board member resigned in protest. And the stock price? It dropped 17% in 3 days. Mark stayed silent at first. He tried to wait out the storm. But silence, in the age of receipts, only adds weight. Then, the second leak happened. A voicemail, the original one, where he said the words in his own voice, laughing. "Let me just buy her a coffin. It'll keep her warm, and it'll keep her out of the way." The backlash turned volcanic. Public statements poured in from the company's HR department, then the ethics committee. There were whispers of lawsuits, internal audits, even employee walkouts. Finally, the board made their move. Mark Green was asked, then forced, to step down. It made national headlines. I saw the coverage on Thomas's old television, the grainy kind that still had a rabbit ear antenna and yellowed remote buttons. The news anchor paused on a split screen, my face on the left, Mark's on the right. The woman who reminded America how we treat the elderly is the mother of the man who reminded us why that message matters. I sat frozen, tea cooling in my hands. Thomas reached over and turned off the TV. He did not look triumphant, just quiet. "I didn't ask for this," I whispered. "No," he said, "you didn't. But sometimes the truth asks for you." That night, my inbox flooded. Messages from strangers, people thanking me, crying, apologizing to their own parents. A schoolteacher wrote, "Your speech made me call my mother after 10 years. An Army veteran said, "I've never cried in uniform until I saw your video." One woman simply wrote, "Thank you. My kids don't call, but you reminded me I'm still here." But amid the flood came one message that made my breath hitch. It was from Mark. No subject line, just 3 words. "I am sorry." The call came just after sunset. I had just finished setting the table on Thomas's back porch, 3 place settings, even though it was just us and our neighbor's daughter who often stopped by with flowers or books. The sky over Malibu was bruised pink, and the sound of the tide below was soft, steady, like a grandmother humming to herself. My phone rang, a number I still knew by heart. I let it ring twice before picking up. His voice cracked on the first word. "Mom!" I did not answer. He exhaled hard. Then quieter. I saw the video. Still I waited. I heard the voicemail too, and the news, everything. I lost the board position, the house. Lena's gone to her sister's. I just... Silence, then a whisper, barely audible. "Mom, I was wrong. I was cruel, and I'm so sorry." I could hear him crying. The kind of crying that does not beg for forgiveness, only relief. "I thought I was being strong," he said. "I thought I was setting boundaries, but I was just scared of how much I didn't know you anymore, of how much I needed you and hated needing you." Still, I said nothing, because something in me, something sacred and long buried, needed to know he would speak, even if I never did again. He tried once more. "Please, say something." I looked out at the horizon. The waves kept moving. Then I opened the photo gallery on my phone, found the one Thomas had taken just that morning. It was me, him, and 6 other people from the community center, arms around each other, smiling. Behind us, the ocean wide and open. Around me, people who had started calling me Mama Helen, not because of blood, but because of care. I attached the photo to a message. Underneath I typed, "I am not in a coffin. I am living in a place where my heart is still allowed to matter." Then I sent it. I put the phone face down on the table. Thomas poured me tea. No questions, no judgment. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded. Because I was. For the first time in years, I truly, absolutely was. I did not come to Malibu to punish anyone. I did not come to prove a point, or to go viral, or to teach anyone a lesson. I came here because something inside me, small but stubborn, refused to disappear quietly, something deeper than pride, stronger than pain. I came because I was still alive. For so long I thought love meant silence, that being a good mother meant shrinking, that sacrifice meant disappearing just enough for everyone else to shine. But here's the truth. Love without boundaries is not love. It is surrender. I spent decades being dependable, useful, uncomplaining. I taught myself to expect nothing and forgive everything. I told myself that was what strong women did. But strength is not quiet obedience. Strength is staying soft in a world that tries to harden you. People ask if I feel vindicated now that the world knows what happened. They ask if I'm happy that my son was humbled, that his name is attached to shame. No, because I did not raise a son to see him fall. I raised a son because I believed in life, in continuity, in legacy. And that's what hurts the most. But hurt does not mean hate. I don't hate Mark. I just can't carry him anymore. He will have to learn to walk without the weight of my forgiveness always cushioning his fall. Because that too is love, letting someone face the echo of their choices. I live in Thomas's home now. We're not husband and wife. We are something gentler, 2 souls who lost and waited and found each other not at the beginning, but where it mattered most. the middle. I volunteer at the community center. I bake bread. I read aloud to people who cannot read anymore. I write letters to people who do not get mail. I laugh. I live. And Malibu? Malibu is not the place where I came to die. It is the place I remembered I was still alive. If you are reading this, or watching this, or hearing my story through a friend, and you feel invisible, like a burden, like something left behind, I want to say something to you. You are not excess. You are not noise. You are not something to be managed. You are memory. You are warmth. You are the part of someone's story that made them whole. Maybe they forgot, maybe they chose to, but forgetting does not erase worth, and silence does not erase truth. You matter then, you still matter now, and if no one else sees that, I do. So wherever you are, a kitchen alone, a nursing home chair, a porch with no visitors, remember this. You were once someone's whole sky, and maybe, just maybe, you still are, to someone who forgot you ever existed. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you think of a mother you haven't called, a grandmother you once left waiting at the window, or a woman in your life who gave more than she ever received, then do not let the silence stay silent. Here on Grandma True Stories, we don't scream, we remember. We speak what others buried, and we remind the world, you don't need a microphone to be heard. You just need the truth, told out loud. So if you believe revenge can come in the form of grace, if you believe wisdom has wrinkles, and if you believe that the quietest woman in the room still has something to say, then subscribe. Join us, because when a grandma speaks, the world finally listens. Subscribe to Grandma True Stories. We don't tell tales, we tell truths, the kind that stay with you.